Oh, wrong way. There's Nora in the background. Just going to be listening into this conversation. I think that autism fatigue is possibly the one thing that can push people to find a diagnosis. I think for a lot of us who weren't diagnosed until later on in life, we get the depression diagnosis maybe first, or we kind of feel, just really burnt out in our life, and it can be the thing to push some of us to actually find the answers. I know for me it was the catalyst to finding a diagnosis, because I couldn't live, not knowing what was going on up here. Just being told that it was anxiety just wasn't enough for me, and I thought, if I don't find an answer sooner or later, I'm ready to take my life, and that's just what it is. I needed to find those answers. I needed somebody to listen and understand that this exhaustion that I felt, this deep sadness, burnout that I felt, I couldn't keep going the way that I was. Couldn't live like that. And I often question, even as a child, I would wonder, how people make it to adulthood and how people look happy. Anyway, I think it's an important topic to talk about for neurodivergent people, not just autistic people. So that's what I want to talk about today. I don't think that I can have an autism channel and not talk about autism fatigue. I'm stunned that it has taken me as long as I have to talk about this, because this was such a prevalent issue pre-diagnosis in my life. So I want to say I apologize for not talking about this topic sooner. As I said at the beginning, I think that it really can be the catalyst to finding answers, to trying to understand yourself. It can push people in the sadness that they feel in their life. It can push people to try and find answers, to find some form of happiness. What is autism fatigue? What does that even mean? Nori's back. Yeah, get comfortable, love. We're going to be here for a while. So autism fatigue is the mental, physical, and emotional exhaustion that comes from a variety of things. Suppressing stims, forcing eye contact, scripting, really prepping yourself to deal with the world, monitoring tone and body language, facial expressions, trying to follow unspoken rules, and basically overall just trying to fake normal reactions, really trying to blend in with neurotypicals. If you were somebody that was diagnosed later in life, then chances are you didn't have any answers, you didn't have any indication that you were autistic, and so the only way you could deal with it, the only coping mechanism you had, was just to get on with it. You didn't have the answers to explain what was going on, so you just had to progress forward in your life as best as you could, that is. I just want to say, this isn't to be confused with depression or laziness, by no means. You just cannot function. You have overexerted your mind, your body, your emotions too much to try and fit into neurotypical environments. That is the key difference here. We are not talking about depression or laziness. So I want to share how this presented for me prior to the diagnosis that I received at age 25. For those of you who don't know, I'm sure that there will be a lot of you that relate to these things that I talk about. So for me, particularly more so as a child, there were a lot of meltdowns, a lot of anger, a lot of suppressing everything that I was feeling all throughout the school day, only for it to kind of come out in my safe space, in my home, specifically with my mum. There was a lot of screaming matches between her and I, the frustration of me trying to expel whatever I held in for the day, and then from my mum not knowing this and not knowing how to help. But it became this routine in our household that, every single day after the school, the school day, I would lose it. You can imagine after going through a full school day as a child and then screaming until 5 o'clock, 2 straight hours, 3 straight hours sometimes of screaming, that's pretty exhausting for a child to deal with. This ultimately kind of lessened a little bit as I grew into a teenager, but then I guess because I became more aware of the world and myself and my place in it and questioning my place in it, it then started to develop into questioning what the hell I'm here for, existential crisis. And this probably happened once a month. And while that does sound like, a long period of time, when I say existential crisis, what I mean is complete and utter breaking down, depression in that moment, and really at the end of the day wanting to take my life, not believing that I was cut out to be born on this planet, begging my mum for answers, why was I born? Why do I have this brain? It's so different. I don't know how to explain why it's different, but I just know that most people are not struggling in the way that I'm struggling, and I'm screaming for someone to understand. I'm screaming for the world to know, but I don't have the words, and I don't have the vocabulary, and I don't have any answers, and clearly my own mother doesn't. So if she doesn't and I don't, then how can anyone else take me seriously? And it was just this doom and gloom cycle until I cried myself to sleep, and then the next day going, okay, I released, I got it all out. Those feelings are still there, but I've released every bit of energy that I can possibly give until the next month. Weekends I would spend alone. I've talked about this before. I didn't kind of go to parties. I did not partake in drinking and drugs and all of that, because most of the time my weekends were spent on my own trying to recoup for the next week of school. I didn't like sleepovers, and I think eventually, as I grew from a teenager into an adult, this existential crisis, this anxiety, this kind of underlying sadness turned into depression, and then wanting to kind of end it, believing that, I've gone 25 years, 24 years, it's clearly not getting better. The older I get, what's the point? And I just want to say that all of this happened behind closed doors. All of this only happened in my home life. So the only people that ever saw this rage, this sadness, this depression, this anxiety was my mum, my brother, my dad sometimes. It was contained to the home. And when I walked out that front door, no one saw anything. I had to contain it because I didn't have answers. I had no reason to be acting like this. As far as everyone could see, I was just like everybody else. Outside the front door, I behaved my age. Outside the front door, I was a normal kid, a normal teenager, a normal adult. But when I was in the home, when I was in my safe space, I regressed backwards, and the meltdowns were extreme. I don't think I was happy, by no means. I think it was just a continual readiness for what was going to go wrong in my life. And so I guess this is how burnout showed itself in my life. As a high-masking autistic person, it showed itself in ways that I could feel. I knew I was struggling, I knew I was suffering, I knew I wasn't happy, but I just had to keep going. So all of that forced me into therapy, because at the time, that's all we knew what to do. I'm depressed, I'm wanting my life to end, I've taken myself out of uni, I've moved back home, I've lost kind of all the foundation that I had set myself in the early stages of my life, early stages of my adult life, I should say. I lost it all. And so I was forced into therapy, and I went to therapy and I spoke to someone for 3 years. And it was within those 3 years that the same therapist who offered up the suggestion of autism, maybe this is what is happening. And I mean, she was completely right. For sure. Of course, immediately after a diagnosis, things definitely shift and a mindset definitely changes. But I think that, and this is what the psychologist told me, this is day one of the rest of your life, the day of the diagnosis. This is going to be a lifelong journey, understanding myself and unpacking my life and everything I've gone through and what type of life I'm going to be living. All of this it's not an overnight thing. I am now 29 years old. I'm 4 years on from my diagnosis. And this is how my burnouts, my fatigue, my autism fatigue looks like now, having understood myself a whole lot more. Sorry guys, the lighting is changing. We are struggling. There is no anger and there is no meltdowns. While I still have different points in my life where I just need to let kind of the ground open up from under me and just let it swallow me up, I still completely have those moments, and I still have moments where I just completely unravel in terms of emotion. But I would say now it's like I know that I need to get into my body more. I've developed a relationship with myself now where I can feel when things are off. So I try and get into my body more. I've started running. I may go off to sleep immediately, just knowing, okay, I can sleep this off. I might sleep a whole lot more. I might eat more. I might shower more, doing all the self-care things, just kind of amplified, coming back to myself, coming back to my body. I think as well, perhaps I maybe regress back to being a child in some ways, just needing to kind of not talk and really just connecting with myself, as I said. Listening to music, watching TV shows, writing to connect back with my emotions and my feelings, everything I enjoy doing, even when I'm not burnt out, I just do that times 10. It's really just, regulating myself, doing what feels familiar as well. This is now what autism fatigue looks like. Sometimes that might mean that I need to socialize, but most of the time it doesn't. Most of the time it means that even when it's a sunny day outside, even when the whole world is out there and enjoying the sun and each other, it might mean that I need to be by myself and trying to work out what's going on in my head and my body and doing whatever it takes to kind of bring those answers out. Or maybe just making it a little bit more comfortable to sit with, which that's when the TV and music comes in handy for me. So this is just what my experience of autism fatigue looks like as a high-masking autistic woman. And I know that my experiences you might be able to relate to some, but not all. So I am going to now talk about, the other things that can go on for you if you are a high-masking autistic individual, and how that fatigue can present. Number one, I think it's chronic exhaustion. No matter how much sleep you get, whether it even be 12 hours, you are still continually tired. You wake up tired. It's just this draining feeling that just is underlying in your brain all throughout the day. And no matter how much you try and take care of yourself or try and rest, that feeling doesn't go away. This can also look like shutdowns and meltdowns in private. And I think that this is one of the biggest misconceptions if you are not autistic is like, oh, you have to be having like tantrums and meltdowns. And it's visibly apparent when an autistic person is like pissed off or overwhelmed. They can't hide it. They will show it. And I think that this is certainly one look of autism. This can present in a lot of people. It's certainly not been the case for me as a very high masking autistic person. Don't get me wrong, just because these things have become less frequent for me as an adult does not mean that it's never going to come up again, like meltdowns and shutdowns. They certainly will. Reduce speech or blanking out in conversation, particularly if you are having to maintain a job or some form of social life and you are feeling burnt out, it can be really hard to pay attention to the person and actually your mind wandering as the person is talking. It's not that we don't want to be there and present and it's not that we find the person boring by any means, but the brain can have a harder time focusing when it has kind of reached the tipping point of stress. Increased irritability or emotional sensitivity. This can definitely be rejection sensitive dysphoria and feeling like what everyone is saying to you is kind of directed to you as an insult or they're trying to get at you in some way. And I think if you are kind of in this more vulnerable place, the brain is picking up things hearing things as more hurtful intentions when maybe the intention wasn't actually there. This is also very similar to how it feels to be depressed as well. I definitely felt that sensitivity and feeling hard done by myself, by my brain, by my friends, by the world. I was just angry and hurt, and it made me take myself away from a lot of people in the fear of being hurt. Executive dysfunction. So this is struggling to initiate tasks. So, sometimes if we're like in bed and we know we have to get up for a shower, the transition of like finding the energy to like switch between tasks. Once we're in the shower, it can be hard to get ourselves out of the shower and then get dressed. Eating cold food, hot food, all of these things can take a mental toll, particularly if we are burnt out and we're needing that extra push. Just existing can feel really, really difficult. And I just want to actually take a moment for those of you who are in this place, who are beating themselves up for, maybe you're feeling like you're not achieving anything, or you're not keeping up with goals that you set yourself at the beginning of the year, or whatever. If you are struggling with burnout, autism fatigue, just the simple transition of tasks, just to look after yourself, to take care of your home, to feed yourself, whatever, can feel draining. And if this is the best you can do right now, is just exist, acknowledge it. I just want to say, like, it can be really, really difficult, and there are a lot of people who understand. You're not alone in this feeling by any means. Social withdrawal after intense periods of socializing. So this is definitely something that I don't have to be in burnout or fatigue to experience. This is a daily, weekly thing. If I'm doing a lot of socializing with people, I need, and I said this in my video last week, I will need double, if not triple, the amount of time on my own compared to the amount of time I spent socializing with other people. So definitely don't beat yourself up for feeling like this. Like, your brain wasn't exactly designed to be socializing all the time. It needs the downtime. You might also struggle with somatic symptoms. So this is like headaches, migraines, body aches, nausea. Your body might be the first telltale sign where it's saying like, hey, listen to me, please. I'm going to make you slow down if you don't slow down, by developing somatic symptoms like these. Loss of interest in things you might normally enjoy, particularly for neurodivergent people. Like, when we love something, we love it. With the loss of that, that is definitely indicative that there is something going wrong. If I am not talking about my special interests, there is something wrong. There is something going on up here. And finally, it's overthinking every interaction. Again, this can be part and parcel of autism, anxiety, things like that. Also, rejection sensitive dysphoria. But this on steroids, this isn't the norm. This shouldn't be the norm. This shouldn't be how you're living your life. And if you are, your brain is really trying to protect you in environments, in social environments, so that there is no extra pain being delivered to you. These are just some ways that autism fatigue can show up, particularly if you are high masking, where the symptoms, I guess, aren't so apparent. I guess I just want to end by saying that, the reason that autism fatigue can be so hard to spot for high masking autistic people is we are really, really good at pretending that everything is okay. We didn't have answers for the majority of our life, so things had to be okay. We had to get on with it. We had to tell ourselves that everything was fine even when it wasn't. We had to pretend to make other people feel comfortable because we needed those connections. We needed to feel normal. Another reason it can be really hard to spot is, for a lot of us, we were praised for appearing so normal. So this in our mind has kind of like set the tone that the more normal we are, the more neurotypical we are passing, the better for us. But that just isn't true. Pretending to be something you're not is not the better way to be, regardless if people reject you or not. You'd rather be rejected for something that you are rather than something that you're not. I also want to say that fatigue happens behind closed doors. It is not always apparent, particularly if you maintain a 9-to-5 job, socializing, a marriage, a family. friendships, other commitments. You can still have burnout, fatigue, whatever, and still continue on with these things. It all happens behind closed doors if you're a high masker. All of this to say, I am just wanting to send each and every one of you who have struggled with this, who know what I'm talking about, can connect with what I'm talking about, or are struggling with this currently. I'm just sending you the biggest hug right now. Just please know that you're not alone in these feelings. It's not that you're doing something wrong. It's just that you've overexerted yourself in a way that your brain it needs some adapting. Maybe not overdo yourself or overextend yourself if you're a people pleaser or such a helpful person. Maybe before it gets to that point of pushing yourself to the brink of stress, just take a step back. You don't have to exert yourself to the maximum in order for people to love you. And I needed to hear that myself. So I'm going to end on that note. If you guys would love to see any more neurodivergent content, my links are always down below. I connect with you guys all the time on my Instagram. So thank you so much for watching this video. I love you guys so much. Sending each and every one of you a big hug right now. And I'll talk to you very soon. Bye.